It would just be like I'm playing, I'm surround, I'm in C.
Good morning, and welcome on this cold, rainy, blah morning. Welcome to this bright spot that's bright because of love, because of creativity, because of music, because of joy. Welcome to the Eno River Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. We're located here in Durham, North Carolina, located on the ancestral lands of the Eno, the Shakori, the Saponi, the Sissipaha, and the Lumbee people, whose descendants live among us here even today. I'm Reverend Deborah Cayer. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever your race, your gender, whomever you love, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, welcome. If you're new to this community, I invite you to introduce yourself in the chat box, and we'll give you a warm ERUUF welcome. There'll be a link there so that you can find out more about us if you haven't already. We also invite you, or anyone who's interested, to the Inquirers class, which right now is being held online at 9:30. The link for that class can be found every week in e-news or in the events section on our website, right on the bottom of the homepage. We also offer Sunday morning classes for children and youth, starting at 9:30 on Sunday mornings, for adults too. But the children's classes are variously in-person, outdoors, masked, distanced. So check our website for our offerings, and then also for adult programs as well. You can just check our Friday e-news or the website for everything that's going on around here. One special meeting that's just been added is this Tuesday evening at 7:30. Reverend Jacqueline and I will be on Zoom with parents of children and youth in our RE programs. The link for that meeting was sent out through the RE listserv, but you can contact the ERUUF office if you'd like to join us and you need the link. This morning's service will be led by Reverend Jacqueline Brett, Ms. Lisa Jones, and Dr. Henry McKoy. And we have a special guest musician today, in addition to our own Kate Lewis. Shauna Tucker is here on vocals and playing the cello with Kate. It's a very special morning. We're thrilled. Welcome. So I invite you at this time to just take a breath with me. Take a breath of life's energy and just bring it into yourself. Feel it just sliding through you and just filling you with goodness. And as you take another breath, find your center. Find the place where the busyness falls aside, the stresses just take a back step, where the real you is present. Where the real you, the most real you that you are, meets everything else that is really real around you. This is the place where we begin our worship service together. And so we continue right now with the Prelude.
Sharpest blade, most easily blunted, mishandled by someone. The youngest tree's growth is easily stunted if burned by the sun. Cherish the precious ones. We don't cherish the precious ones. most easily spoiled, if not allowed to age. The blankest book most easily soiled, teardrops left on its page. Cherish the precious ones. We don't cherish the precious ones. The softest silk, the darkest hour, the sweetest milk, the highest power. What we take for granted are the most enchanting things on this earth. Blind to their worth, cherish the precious ones. We should cherish the precious ones. We must cherish the precious ones. We don't, we should, we must cherish the precious ones.
Thank you, Shauna. Our opening words this morning are from 2000 Seasons by Ghanaian novelist Ayi Arma. The linking of those gone, ourselves here, those coming. Our continuation, our flowing, not along any meretricious channel, but along our living way, the way. It is that remembrance that calls us.
The eyes of seers should range far into purposes. The ears of hearers should listen far toward origins. The utterer's voice should make knowledge of the way, of heard sounds and visions seen. The voice of the utterers should make this knowledge inevitable, impossible to lose.
We light our chalice this morning in remembrance of our ancestors and history created, with appreciation for the light we create in this present moment and the ancestors we shall one day become. And let us sing together now. We're going to sing hymn number 1001, Breaths, adapted from the poem by W.E.B with music by Cayer Barnwell. Miss Joan will lead us, and the words will appear on your screen.
Listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Ah, whoosh, ah, whoosh. Those who have died have never, never left. The dead are not under the earth. They are in the rustling trees. They are in the groaning woods. They are in the crying grass. They are in the moaning rocks. The dead are not under the earth. So listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Ah, whoosh, ah, whoosh. Those who have died have never, never left. The dead have a pact with the living. They are in the woman's breast. They are in the wailing child. They are with us in the home. They are with us in the crowd. The dead have a pact with the living. So listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Ah, whoosh, ah, whoosh.
Good morning. I am Ann Verdine Jones, Ambassador for the 2,500 Hours of Love Initiative. Since the onset, we have delivered messaging asking you to pledge hours, messaging that encouraged you to log your hours, and messaging highlighting organizations and volunteer opportunities. Today, the messaging is simple. Thank you. As of yesterday, we pledged 3,505 hours, and we logged 2,418 volunteer hours. Together, you have met and exceeded the challenge to honor Reverend Deb's commitment to racial equity and racial justice work beyond ERUUF's walls. You continue to build partnerships and sustainable relationships in the community, lending you to several areas in need. We have evolved individually and collectively. ERUUFians, you are amazing. Thank you.
We are going to enjoy the story for all ages, which is Stacy's Extraordinary Words by Stacey Abrams, illustrated by Kit Thomas.
Go ahead.
Okay. Stacy loved words. She loved to read and write and say them. She adored fun words, long words, unusual words, words with wonderful histories and weird combinations. Whenever Stacy learned a new word, it was like making a new friend. First, she would find the dictionary. Then she would look up where the word had come from and learn its secrets. Did any of its letters hide and stay quiet, like the P in ptarmigan, a bird that lives in cold northern regions, or were they strong like the I in bright?
Next, she wrote the word in her special notebook of extraordinary words. She practiced how to arrange the letters just right, how to sound them out. That's because she loved spelling interesting words most of all. With her favorite words, she would try to remember their quirks, what made them special. When she saw a super long word like onomatopoeia, a funny word to describe the sounds of other words, she had to jump and sway. Words like duckling made her grin, persnickety tickled her tongue.
Sometimes Stacy thought that words understood her better than people did. When she sat by herself during recess, they never teased her about being quiet or about being clumsy when she fell or awkward when the joke in her head came out wrong. When she read books under the covers, words never told her to go to sleep. Words understood why she was grumpy or anxious. In fact, words helped her explain what she was feeling, if only to herself.
One day, Stacy's teacher, Mrs. Blaisdell, asked her to wait after class. She squirmed in her seat because she was afraid, petrified, another way to say really, really afraid. Usually, the teacher only kept a student after a class because of a blunder, a mistake. Mrs. Blaisdell called Stacy to her desk, and she returned her spelling test. A big red 100 sat at the top of the page. The teacher asked her, "Do you know what a spelling bee is?" "A really smart insect?" Stacy joked. The teacher smiled. A spelling bee is a contest where students compete to spell as many words correctly as they can. I would like for you to participate. Stacy couldn't believe it. Who else will be there? I am nominating you and Jake. The spelling bee is next week.
Stacy's excitement suddenly evaporated. Jake was not her friend. He was a bully who knew words too. Just yesterday, he had used a complicated word that made Suki cry. Last week, she heard him say something cruel to Zivko about his accent. Stacy thought it was stupendous that Zivko knew words in 2 different languages. Stacy knew as many words as Jake did. She wanted to say something when he said mean things to her friends, but she was intimidated, scared, because sometimes he said hurtful things to her too. She wished she had used her clever words to help Suki or Zivko, or herself by speaking up. Perhaps at the spelling bee, she would be braver. At the spelling bee, she would not be silent.
All week long, Stacy studied her spelling words from school and the ones she kept in her notebook. Still, the spelling bee felt as far away as the longest word she had ever seen, sesquipedalian, a fancy way to describe words with lots of syllables. The days of the week were monotonous, torturous, and sluggish. Every hour felt longer and longer. Stacy wished for the week to whisk its days away.
Finally, the morning of the spelling bee arrived. Stacy walked into the county library with her mother, holding her hand tight. Mama gave her a big hug and whispered into her ear, "Just do your best. Your dad and I are very proud of you." Stacy followed her teacher to the room where the other students waited until it was time to go. Then they went onto a stage. The announcer explained the rules. Kids stepped up to the microphone one by one to get their word. If they spelled it right, the announcer told them so. But if they made a mistake, a bell would ring. The student would have to leave the stage. No do-overs.
Stacy's turn finally came. Her stomach ached with nervous energy, but she was ready. Say the word, dither. Sound it out, dither. Spell it, D-I-T-H-E-R. That is correct. The announcer called on the next student and the next. Promptly, enormous, shutter, transportation, craggy, reception, village. Finally, only 3 contestants remained, Stacy and Jake and a girl from another school. The girl went up to spell her word. Ding! She had spelled chocolate without the second O.
We are down to our final 2 contestants, the announcer told the audience. Jake took a long time to spell accept. Stacy got squeezed, but she remembered the lost letters she adored, like Q and Z. Jake tackled clamoring. Stacy conquered disengage. Then Jake defeated geometry. Stacy returned to the podium, ready to do battle with her next word. She repeated it. She pronounced it. She spelled it. INSTANTANIOUS. Instantaneous.
As she waited for the announcer, the bell dinged. I'm sorry, that is correct. The proper spelling is... Stacy couldn't hear the rest of what was said. Tears filled her eyes, but she stayed on stage like a good sport as Jake got his trophy and she received her second-place ribbon. Everyone congratulated Jake, and so did she. Good job. Jake laughed and rolled his eyes. At least I know the difference between I and E.
Stacy felt embarrassed, but she refused to let Jake make her cry. Well, I misspelled my word, but I do know how to be courteous. You should try it. She turned away and went to find her mom. If today were like one of the stories Stacy loved most, she would have won. And Jake would have learned that words were a gift that shouldn't be used to hurt people. But things didn't always happen that way in real life. Sometimes change was harder, and it didn't happen right away. Stacy felt the hand brush at her cheek. It opened her fist and smoothed out the ribbon. Mama, she put a butterscotch candy on top. Stacy's favorite kind. You okay?
I lost. But you came so far, nearly to the very end. Not far enough. I got the letter wrong, and I didn't win. I failed. You only fail if you stop, her mother reminded her. I know there's a word for that. You know it too. Stacy thought about one of her favorite words, perseverance. Perseverance. Exactly. So let's go home and learn more words. There's always next year.
Stacy imagined all the words she had yet to meet, new words and new ways to speak up and help others. She'd find them all. No, Mama, there's always tomorrow. As I sit in meditation thinking I shouldn't think, I shift, recenter, and guess what? I think again. Black History Month always reveals to me the complexity of that which is life. As I sit comfortably in my privilege of safety and relative security, I question whether or not I'm doing what would make my ancestors proud. In my culture, there is a thin and unstable line between being a bridge and being a sellout. Is my white brother and sister an ally or a tool to be used in the fight for freedom? Is it right to put spiritual energy into a fight when merging is what we actually need? How do I know when I am directing my spirit toward fear instead of toward love? How do I say that I don't want an ally when those around me worked so hard to be one and might look at me and say, oh boy, here we go again. They are changing what they want from us again. No, I must be clear that I don't speak for others. Only for myself when I say that instead of an ally, I want a co-conspirator. Someone who, in the absence of those who look like me, in the absence of cameras or video recordings, asks the question that rests at the center of my heart. Where are those who are unlike us? Where are the Black, brown, female, queer, or unlabeled participants? Where are their voices, their minds, their contributions, which are of great importance? On this day in this month, I reflect upon those who dared to ask those difficult questions, especially the Black, but also the white. Those brave enough to say, I know this looks like the norm, but something doesn't feel right. What is this restlessness or questioning at my center? See, it's a feeling that we all have. When our spirits are not at rest, if you stop, get quiet for just a while, you, my friends, will recognize the feelings within the heart of you. It's that itch at the nape of your neck, a tingle in the midst of your spine that you wish your arms were long enough to reach. An unsettledness, a hitch in your breathing, a question in the very back corner of your mind. It says that something is a bit off center, that there's a yearning you have yet to feel, that your emotions are unsettled as they roam for a place to land. None of us will experience true peace until we know that we have done our part. The part that is mine alone and unable to be affected or interrupted by you doing the part that is yours. See, when Martin spoke of the mountaintop, he was sharing his vision. When Rosa refused to move, it was because she was tired. When Frederick Douglass spoke of the perils of slavery, it was based upon his need to exercise the atrocities he had faced and explain them to another. It benefited many, but the experience was his own. That's the part that is often forgotten. While the ancestors' products, speeches, and movements were created, it was about succumbing to an individual need. Martin had been shown something that he felt an overwhelming need to share. Rosa felt an overwhelming need to rest. Frederick felt an overwhelming need to relive his worst moments in order to stop it from happening to others. None of these are people who set out to make history, but they did. Simply by responding to a moment of necessity, they managed to change the world. What would we have done under those circumstances if we were Rosa? Would we have sat? If we were Rosa, would we have sat? If we were her bus driver, would we have called the police? If we were standing on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, would we have moved forward with Martin or slipped back into the comforts and relative safety of our homes? If we were one of the police officers, would we have pulled the trigger or raised our club? We would all like to think we would have moved forward or not fired our weapon, thus landing on what we now see as the right side of history. But I must admit, I no longer give a great deal of thought to this. I am reverent of Black history, but have been shown that we too are creating history based upon what we are doing now. See, we are the Black history future generations will read and talk about. Will your descendants feel the pride of discovering a family history of anti-racist activism, which overshadowed the shame of countless others who are left with merely reconciling that their ancestors traded slaves? And for those of us who are BIPOC, will the grandchildren of our grandchildren have to reflect upon the civil rights movements of the 1960s in a search for examples of the never-ending strength and determination we attach to those we honor during this month each year? None of us get to feel sorry for ourselves or rest upon our laurels, for the fight for equality continues. We are far from done. We are here now. Therefore, we continue to shape our stories. Listen carefully. We cannot change the actions or the misdeeds of old, but we get to shape where we go from here. We cannot change Black history, but the Black future, and therefore the American future, is ours to craft. So stop. Shed that which cannot be changed or no longer serves you. Now, take a breath. Another. And then breathe again. It's in there. That overwhelming need to make a change in a personal and individual way. Not necessarily a grand action, for none of us know what will lead to grand. But something small that feels just right within your body. Something that you do have the ability to do or to give. For we all believe and experience our needs a little differently. You will know it. You will hear it. You will feel it. Now answer, and let's go create Black history. Amen.
Amen, Lisa. So on this wet and chilly last Sunday morning of Black History Month, which, as many of you have heard me say time and again, is all of our history, we consider on this day, what of the souls of Black folk? And it is not because I do not consider the souls of other folk, but as I have been engaged with others in some of the issues pressing upon the people of our city, this is the question ringing loudly. 100 years ago, a pioneering response was presented by William Edward Burghardt, or W.E.B. Dubois, as he became known. He was born in 1868 in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. He received his bachelor's degrees from both Fisk University and Harvard, the latter because Harvard refused to accept course credits from the historically Black Fisk. And he completed his graduate work at the University of Berlin and at Harvard, where in 1895, he became the first African American to earn a doctorate. Scholar, social scientist, historian, and prolific author, W.E.B. Du Bois was nothing short of brilliant and is considered one of the major thinkers of the 20th century. It was in 1903 that he wrote his seminal work, The Souls of Black Folk, as a young Black scholar, with what journalist Plathel Benjamin described in 2002 as contempt for conventional wisdom on issues of race and class that prevailed during that time. Indeed, when the book was published, the very first generation of African Americans had just come of age after emancipation with a sense of entitlement to freedom. Historian Leslie Brown notes, they expected to manage their own families and demanded to control their own labor. They desired learning and wished to send their children to school, and they wanted to participate in their community's politics as contributors and citizens. In the chaos of emancipation, Black folks survived on mutual aid, wit, and hard work. They embraced themselves as whole beings, not just as citizens and not just as family, but as community. They founded institutions, wove together a national and international network of association, and fashioned an astute culture of oppositional politics. All the more remarkable, Leslie Brown says, Black people of African descent intentionally created a future. It was in this context that Playthell Benjamin pointedly notes that in W.E.B. Dubois, Black Americans found an advocate with the courage, eloquence, and intellect to voice their spiritual strivings, and that the 14 essays that comprise the souls of Black folk must be seen as the most influential of the literary texts that forged the racial consciousness of the Black Atlantic world. The souls of Black folk went on to influence intellectuals in America and internationally, and over 100 years later, it continually remains in print to this day. And this work, Du Bois famously and accurately named that in America, the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. He held up a mirror to whites and Blacks alike and presented groundbreaking truths and ideas, many of which remain unresolved and continue to be debated and wrestled with today. And it is in this context that today we specifically consider the souls of Black folk here in Durham as history made back then and as a living history we create today for the future of our city. In a 1912 article, Du Bois, who often visited here in Durham when he traveled through the South, lauded what he called the upbuilding of Durham. Upbuilding being a term he defined as the social and economic development of Black communities after slavery. Upbuilding required both physical labor and a psychic reformation of identity. And Blacks in Durham, for the most part, were succeeding. African Americans owned and operated brickyards, a textile mill, lumber mill, a foundry, furniture factory, cigar factory, library, hospital, a college, churches, schools, a plethora of service and retail establishments, and community organizations. In the gendered language of his time, Du Bois wrote, "Today, there is a singular group in Durham where a Black man may get up in the morning from a mattress made by Black men in a house which a Black man built out of lumber which Black men cut and planed. He may put on a suit which he bought at a colored haberdashery and socks knit at a colored mill. He may cook victuals from a colored grocery on a stove which Black men fashioned. He may earn his living working for colored men, be sick in a colored hospital, and buried from a colored church. And the Negro Insurance Company will pay his widow enough to keep his children in a colored school." Du Bois recognized a financial sector here in Durham that he dubbed the Black Wall Street. It does not go without note that the racialization of all of this was due to Jim Crow segregation. As historian Leslie Brown points out, the renowned Black Durham was formed as a strategy of self-protection. That it managed to flourish amid the racial animosity of the South was deemed great progress. As Brown describes, modern buildings owned and occupied by African Americans rose against a backdrop of repression. Nationally, Black Durham was viewed as a symbol of what African Americans could do on their own when left alone by whites. And Brown notes that when whites destroyed Greenwood, the Black community of Tulsa, Oklahoma, African American leaders sought a new beacon of hope. Sociologist E. Franklin Frazier found a Black city on a hill in Durham, a place to exemplify the triumphant climb out of slavery. And he proclaimed the African American community here the capital of the Black middle class. So lest I paint too rosy a picture here, though the community overall thrived, there were also internal issues of gender oppression, common among all races in its day, as well as issues of class. But I bring this history of our city for some of us to remember and others among us to learn for the first time. For to not know our histories is to make misinformed assumptions about what we are a witness to today. And 100 years later, from our 21st century vantage point, as we look out upon the landscape of our city from the places of privilege and comfort, it is possible that we just might not grasp what we might unwittingly be complicit in today. The history is offered so that as Blacks responded 100 years ago, we too might reflect deeply upon the question, what is the future we today are intentionally creating within our city? What are the histories and herstories that will be told about who we are now when the souls of Black folk in Durham are being considered tomorrow? Amen.
We have to know our history, and we have to dream the world of the future. Langston Hughes dreamed a world, and this is in his original language, in the nouns and pronouns of his day and his time. Hear these words. I dream a world where man no other man will scorn, where love will bless the earth and peace its paths adorn. I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day. I dream a world where Black or white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth, and every man is free, where wretchedness will hang its head, and joy like a pearl attends the needs of all mankind. Of such I dream my world. Will you join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer? Creative source of all there is, this morning we dream a world where all are whole, where all are free. This morning, our hearts are with the Ukrainian people. We send our love and passionate hope for their sustained courage and well-being while they are under brutal attack. May they always keep singing, keep fighting. We send our love to all in the larger community around us whose burdens wear them down to bone-tired weariness. We hold in our hearts all who are battling illness, who struggle with pandemic fatigue and stress, all who are fighting for their health and wholeness, who struggle with injustice, so much, on so many fronts at once. We hold our spiritual community with love as we make our way through major leadership transitions. And this morning we hold Julia Tyler in our hearts with gratitude and with love. We pause for a moment of silence to consider what is most intense, most in need in our minds and hearts. Inspired by the creativity, ingenuity, and entrepreneurship of all who lived, worked, and loved in this place long before any of us were ever born, we turn toward the light, the sun, toward all that is possible. We open our hearts to every goodness that wants to rise from struggle, to sing, to dance, to shout with joy. Together we rise. Together we're strong. Together we work to bend the moral arc of the universe so that everyone can be free, so that everyone can sing their own songs. May it ever be so. Blessed be. Ashe. Amen.
Hiding in the light, seen but out of sight. Who was she then? Who is she now? Silent she will stay. Trust she won't betray the tears she wept. Our secrets kept. Wrapped in mystery, can she wake her heart and see? She could be free. Back to before, stainless and pure, when she was sure love was real. Wrapped in her shell, is it too late to tell her to feel, just to feel? Hiding in the light, seen but out of sight, I see who she could be. like to before, stainless and pure, when she was sure love was real. Wrapped in her shell, is it too late to tell her to feel, just to feel, hiding in the light, seen but out of sight, I see who she could be.
No sound of movement anywhere, indeed. The noisy Greek camp was hushed. Nothing was stirring there, and the ships were gone. Only one conclusion seemed possible. The Greeks had given up. They had sailed for Greece. They had accepted defeat. The people flocked to the abandoned Greek camp to see the sights. Here, Achilles had sucked so long. There, Agamemnon's tent had stood. This was the quarters of the trickster Odysseus. What rapture to see the places empty, nothing in them now to fear. This is a passage from The Fall of Troy by Edith Hamilton in her book Mythology. I began this reflection on the souls of Black folks in Durham with this passage because when I speak to my students about the robust ecosystem that was once Black Durham, as described by Dubois in 1912, it sounds like itself a part of mythology. When I tell my students the story of Durham's Black Hayti, I might as well begin the story with once upon a time, and it ended with, and they lived happily ever after. It might as well be a fairy tale, except we did not live happily ever after. Day-to-day life in Durham is no fairy tale for many Black folks. In fact, it's a nightmare. A nightmare powered by the reality that somehow we had more relative economic equality 100 years ago than we have today. Compared to historic lore, there is little sound or movement in Hayti. The noisiness of Hayti has been hushed, and little remains stirring there. Businesses are gone. Affordable housing is gone. What will happen to these empty places, physically, spiritually, and soulfully? Black Durham feels abandoned, not in words, but in deeds. We hear all the right words about diversity, equity, and inclusion, about the past harms and need for reparative justice. However, that does not translate into equitable actions, outcomes, commitments, and investments. People flock here to see the community that once was there and speak of its past greatness and how it made Durham and Black Durham so special, how it made all of Durham even more special. Right in the South Side neighborhood, once the center of residential Black Durham, and now a poster for gentrification, there's an ever-flowing fountain and brick entrance sign reading, "The Spirit of Hayti." A spirit can represent the ghostly haunts of what once was, but that now is dead. Or it can represent the resiliency of a life that remains. Only time will tell which of Hayti spirits exist. Some may say that Dubois was the preeminent Black scholar of his time, or even a preeminent Black scholar of any time. To me, Dubois is the preeminent scholar of all time, of any race. The sentiments expressed in the souls of Black folks, written nearly 125 years ago, speak to the times that we live in today. Speaks better than most any contemporary work, pinpointing the foundational issues that persist, and it really accurately captures the souls of Black folks at both the aggregate level and the individual level. As a result, I would simply revive Dubois's words in an attempt to reconcile the souls of Black Durham. Black Durham faces the same burden of double consciousness that Du Bois described more than a century ago. Originally, double consciousness was specifically the psychological challenge African Americans experienced as always looking at oneself through the eyes of a racist society and measuring oneself by the means of a nation that looked back in contempt. In Durham, that translates to blacks always looking at oneself through the eyes of a paternalistic white community and measuring oneself by the means of a city that looks back in pity. This dichotomy forces blacks to navigate these opposing worlds just to survive, while striving for self-actualization and the higher aims of life. During Dubois' time, African Americans lived behind the veil of segregation in a hidden world from the view of most white folk. In Durham, during our time, blacks lived behind a veil hidden from the view of most white folk, economic hollowness. Like Dubois, as many blacks in Durham try to publicly and privately speak these truths and feelings, we pray that our words are received in grace, that they are studied closely, and that the mistake and foible are forgiven. The problem of Durham in the 21st century remains similar to that of the 20th century, the color line. And each chapter of life in Black Durham carries sorrowful songs that have followed our people for 400 years. From the Song of Solomon in the Hebrew Bible, I am black, but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Look not upon me because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but mine own vineyard have I not kept. What is it to be black in Durham? What of Black Durham's own vineyards? Who have kept them going, even as blacks have been asked to keep the vineyards of others thriving? Dubois' most famous yet veiled question remains with Black Durham. How does it feel to be a problem people? No one says it directly like that, but the substance of the question is ever present in the round-the-clock news coverage of gun violence and fatalities in our black community, of dismal conditions in public housing, of increasing unaffordability of housing, and of unequal test scores and unemployment. What sometimes feels to be the paternalistic relationship towards Black Durham or the professed wokeness of the broader populace can still come up empty in actual deeds. Related to the question of being a problem people, what's one to say? In society, since the first blacks' arrival in Jamestown or in Durham, we've never been anything else. To be black in Durham is to have limited goals set for our people by others, and sometimes by ourselves, with no resting place from those limitations, coupled with little but flattery and criticism. To be asked for constant reflection and self-examination, while others climb Maslow's hierarchy of needs towards thriving. We are trained only in surviving. Even as we see our own self-respect and power, an untapped asset for the entire city. Why doesn't Durham want to know the power of Black Durham? As the boy said about Black America, Black Durham feels its poverty, scentless, homeless, landless, toolless, savingless, while entering into competition with rich, landed, skilled neighbors who are showing up increasingly across Durham, more and more by the day. To be a poor person, a poor family, or poor neighborhood in Durham is hard, but to be a poor race in a city of dollars is the very bottom of hardships. Feeling the weight of decades and centuries of shackled hands and feet, even as we are constantly studied, prodded, statisticalized, even as we are made broken after broken promises, decade after decade, offered one miracle program after another. As Dubois said and summarized the sentiment of many blacks of his time, who grew weary of the constant struggle to be seen as whole human beings. Lo, we are diseased and dying, cried the dark host. We cannot write, our voting is in vain. What need of an education since we must always cook and serve? Might that be the sentiment of some in contemporary Durham? The city seems to co-sign on this notion by asking blacks to be happy fitting into others' dreams of them, but not in creating our own dreams, or to fit into the dreams that others have for us that do not fit our own, to always serve and to be of service to others, yet never actualizing ourselves as a community. As Dubois professed, the bright ideals of the past, physical freedom, political power, the training of brains and the training of hands, all these in turn have waxed and waned until even the last grows dim and overcast. These efforts to lift Black Durham continue to be oversimplified and incomplete. Currently in Durham, half of those living in poverty are Black. More than 1/3 of Black children 0 to 8 live in homes at or below the poverty level. Only 8% of white children 0 to 8 do. 60% of Black children 0 to 8 live in low-income households. Only 14% of white children 0 to 8 do. 3/4 of Black third graders in Durham are economically disadvantaged. Only 15% of white children are. Single Black women often lead these households. Black Durham is weary. Its soul is tired. Black Durham is sick and tired of being sick and tired, as famously coined publicly by the great Fannie Lou Hamer. The soul of Black Durham is dying, and therefore so is the soul of all of Durham. Where do our souls go after we die? Are we laying in an inactive state of being for eternity? Or is there some sort of resurrection in the here or in the beyond where we get to live again, walk again, talk again, sing again, laugh again, worship again, and pray again among the living? It may depend on your belief, but for many who believe, death can mean rebirth. Hayti Reborn is a community-driven effort currently aiming to answer the question of whether Black Durham will be resurrected if it will ever fully live again. Hayti is hushed, is quiet, but Black Durham has not given up yet. However, at the current rate, there may not be a Black Durham for much longer. Hayti Reborn is a hopeful push by some Native Black folks of Durham in the Hayti community trying to regain and retain control of not only the land in the historic Hayti district, but also of their future and the future of generations that follow. 7 generations into the future. A principle consistent with the Iroquois and indigenous philosophy that the decisions we make today should result in a sustainable world 7 generations into the future. A sustainability that was robbed of Black Durham more than 70 years ago with urban renewal. Black Durham is used to words professing diversity, inclusion, and equity, even while actions of these never live up to those professions. Will these co-conspirators that Lisa spoke about present themselves at this time, and will they remain on the sidelines, as these weary souls wrestle and fight to tear down this foreverville in Durham? Who will look back in time and say what they would have done if given the chance? Whom will they claim to have walked with and supported? What they would have stood for and fought for? This is the here and now. History is made in the present. Those souls leading, involved, and part of Hayti Reborn need everyone within the sound of this message and all of their networks and their networks to join them in this struggle to gain what was theirs. Go to www.HaitiReborn.com and learn about the fight they are waging for autonomous power. What will those who study this time of Durham say in the decades ahead? As they look back, will those listening today realize the inherent worth and dignity of every person, every soul? These are the values that should hold us all together as a city, that should affirm us as a community, that should form the basis of our equitable relationships and guide the vision of a Durham reborn through the vision of a Hayti reborn. Thank you.
As he always does, Dr. McKoy just filled us up with so much to consider. And, you know, I encourage you, go back and listen to this again because there's a lot he had there, and I know that I am. So thank you, Dr. McKoy. Really appreciate your presence here today. All that we see and experience in this community is due to generosity of time, talent, and treasure contributed by our members and also our friends and visitors who appreciate what they experience here and want to see it continue to flourish and thrive. At this time, we'll take up the morning offering, and you'll see a link in the chat box that will lead you to our secure giving portal. And if it's easier for you, feel free to go old school and simply mail a check into the office. Meanwhile, we'll continue with our offertory with the beautiful music of Shauna Tucker and Kate Lewis.
Shine, shine, far away, past valley and hill shines a light. Far away, over forest and trees is a light that heeds neither rain nor shine. It continues to shine for you and for me. It heeds neither rain nor shine. It continues to shine for you and for me. For you and for me. Far away, past valley and hill shines a light. Far away, over field and windmill is a light so beautiful to behold, and it continues to glow for you and for me. It's so beautiful to behold, and it continues to glow for you and for me. For you and for me. It serves as a reminder that you can always find a love so real you'll be able to feel. It's a warmth and glow wherever our souls may go. It serves as a reminder that you can always find a love so real you'll be able to feel. It's a warmth and glow wherever our souls may go. Wherever you go, wherever I go. So look past the mountain and past the sea, see the forest for the trees, and the light will guide us home. Home, so far away, shines a light for you and for me. Yes, shine, shine, shine.
We give thanks. We give thanks for all of the gifts, the abundant gifts that flow into this beloved community, the gift of music, the gift of friends coming to share words that we need to hear, and the gift of just being community together. We give thanks. We are going to sing one more time together, and this time it will be hymn number 151. You know this one. It's I Wish I Knew How. And Miss Joan Tillman will lead us, and the words will be on your screen.
Well, I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. And I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things I should say. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear, for the whole world to hear. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear, for the whole world to hear. Well, I wish I could share all the love that's in my heart. Remove all the bars that keep us apart. And I wish you could know what it means to be me. Then you'd see and agree everyone should be free. Then you'd see and agree everyone should be free. Well, I wish I could give all I'm longing to give. And I wish I could live like I'm longing to live. I wish I could do all the things I can do, though they're way overdue. I'd be starting anew, though I'm way overdue. I'd be starting anew. Well, I wish I could be like a bird in the sky. How sweet it would be if I found I could fly. Oh, I'd soar to the sun and look down at the sea. And I'd sing 'cause I'd know that I feel very free. Yes, I'd sing 'cause I'd know how it feels to be free.
Our closing words are by Sweet Honey in the Rock from their song Tomorrow. And they say, tomorrow lies somewhere around the bend. My life, my joy, my fear, my anger, my love, my dreams, my struggle for change, all of these I take with me. I'm on my way to tomorrow. And may we be on our way, my friends, tomorrow's creators of Durham's history today. Go in peace, go in love. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.